should we start? The
That's
fire?
fire. Start with fire.
Yeah.
That's always where things start now, aren't they?
Yes.
You can always trace them back to that. But well, I just started the recording. So this is our first version of whatever the hell this is going to be. We don't know exactly a title yet. It'll happen at some point.
Yeah, as we were just saying.
We
this
definitely,
is just
yeah. Do we hope to at some point maybe like bring in other friends that we have like Ted and Mikey and Evan? Do we want to? Yeah, if they bring in,
I wasn't thinking about that, but of course, yeah.
bring in people at different points. And so this is a very loose, like no rules sort of. Well, some rules because it's going on YouTube.
No rules.
No
rules.
no rules, except for a lot of rules because YouTube has that thing where there's rules.
Penis.
See, we can say those things because everything I upload is, I think it's held under some sort of mature tag type thing. I don't remember, but this is something we're not new at talking, but we're new for podcasting.
No, I've been talking for about 20 years.
Exactly. Yeah.
So,
I'm not new to YouTube. He's not new to YouTube. And that's this. Hi, I'm Liam, and that's John.
Oh yeah, I guess we should make some sort of introduction.
Yeah, that's John.
Yeah, so I guess I would be new to YouTube in the sense of like making videos that aren't just like pre-planned and storyboarded and everything out and things like that. I guess this would be the first YouTube video where I make just me talking.
That's true. Yeah, he makes more film fest film types of things. I make gameplays and let's plays and stuff like that. I do like to do that sort of stuff too, but for right now, this is something that it's basically been. We should have started this like a year ago because we always get into deep conversations no matter what happens. It just happens.
Those are really the only conversations that I really like to have.
Yeah.
In fact, like I realize that like I'm so terrible at small talk because I really don't care what the weather is like today.
Like, neither do I. It's like I could walk outside and be like, "Yep, that's the weather."
Yeah, no, I mean I don't care unless like I'm either freezing or not. So I just wear a coat every time. So, yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I guess what we kind of agreed we're going to talk about is a little bit about like religion and some types of things like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, we come from very different religious backgrounds. Liam, you are an Odinist.
Yeah,
and
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say if I like well, I think if most people were in my head, they'd be like, oh, you're like an atheist, but like I don't think I can really say that. Like I'm really well, it's complicated. I guess we'll talk a bit about that. But I guess I got really interested in the questions of religion kind of at a younger age, and more so in my late adolescent. Like well, I was raised in a religious Christian home, and then I'd say maybe about like 5th grade, maybe a little older, I started to be like, oh, some of this stuff kind of seems like bullshit. And then I got really interested in watching debates between like atheists and religious people debating about the existence of God. And then really, by the time I was watching those, I was pretty firmly in the position of I'm an atheist, and honestly, I just like watching these people shit on these people's beliefs, which is probably an awful. But no, and it wasn't until I got later I realized that well, of course someone wasn't swallowed up by a fish and like stayed in there for a matter of weeks. Like no, these are deep psychological stories that are older than we even know, and they describe the structure of reality less than like what the objective world is actually made of. Because I think the world of objects and the world of reality are actually completely different. And I actually think when we say objective reality, that's not actually a term that actually makes any sort of sense, really. But yeah, we can talk about that too. But yeah.
Yeah, and I come from a very different background. So I was mainly raised a pagan, but I very much was raised in one of those households that was like, you explore those sorts of things if you want to. If you need any sort of guidance, my parents were there for me. They were like, you choose what you want to. If you like need any sort of religious guidance, or you want to go like see a like pastor or something like that, just ask us. But it was very with my mother, it was very heavily pagan. My father's a Universalist Unitarian, which is different. I never really got into that, but
I have no idea what that is.
It's I don't know what to call it. I never really researched too much into it, but
is it like a Christian base? Is that like a Jew? Like, well,
it's kind of I think it's kind of Christian based, but it's not really. It's not really a denomination of Christianity that I know of, but I'm of course I'm an Odinist, which is a branch of paganism, which believes in the ancient Norse gods, and like it's completely different because we have different creations, like stories and stuff like that, and it's a little bit crazier than Christianity.
So yeah, I'm actually curious. So like, as far as your beliefs go, because like I would say that like I borrow a lot about from Christianity, and I think that there are some things that are like really real about it, but not in the sense like if you went in a time machine, you would see Jesus walking around walking on water. I think he was a real historical figure, but I don't think he was a perfect being, and I don't think he was birthed of the structure of reality or anything like that. I think he's more represents something that is ultimately real in reality. But so yeah, what are kind of your beliefs? Like if you went into a time machine and was in those time periods on the times of creation, what kind of things would you see?
So, my times, technically speaking, our times of creation are they're a little far fetched. At least to most people. Technically for us, so the world started out as nothing. There was just absolutely nothing. Where the world currently is, where Midgard currently is, the home of humans. And then basically there's two places. You had basically this I'm blanking on names. I have books with me that I can reference to easily get names, because our religion, the religion of Odinism and the Norse mythology, which are they're different things, but they do share similar things, of course, because religion and mythology basically like take from each other and like use each other, but it's very heavily unknown because no one of the faith really back in that time wrote things down. Everything was just shared like orally or by song, but there was nothing really written down until later on when like different Christians and stuff came in and were like, yeah, this is the things. I'm really curious to kind of hear like the layout and the core ethics of the story, because I think if you look a lot at the major religions that are around today, they have really similar truths at the heart of them that kind of are explaining something similar and explaining kind of the same things, and you could extrapolate from that and kind of get something like a religion for the 21st century, something like that. But I'm really curious to see how, because the Odinist religion is much older, I'm really curious to see how and where, if you can see those same type of ethics. So I would imagine you would, because I think a lot of the religions, it's almost like a slow evolution or something like that. But let's talk a little about that. So there are some things. It's very, like I said, it starts off at a very interesting point. I'm blanking on names of places, but it started off as there was basically above there was like this almost like ice world. There was just ice and like snow and water. And then in between there and a world of nothing but like fire and brimstone, that would be like hell, even though we do have a hell, but it's that one. Ours is a little bit different. But in between there, so of course the fire started melting the ice, and from there gathering in the nothingness and just basically condensing. It's almost, if you think deep enough into it, it could be semi-scientific, but condensing, the first two beings to come out of anything were Ymir and the Proto-Cow. So, Ymir is the first Jotun, which is a giant. One of the later on created things is Jotunheim, the home of the giants. And what happened was Jotun, or Ymir, would sit there and he would drink from the teats of the proto cow, and then anytime he would sleep or anything like that, more giants would be created from his sweat. That would they would leap from his legs and from his armpits from his sweat and stuff. At the same time, the proto cow was licking up at the ice world, licking away at the salt and stuff, and there he it licked and licked and licked until it uncovered the first god that was basically buried in there. And
where did the cow come?
The cow came from, basically, it was, you could almost say, simultaneous creation.
When the ice melted and the fire melted the ice, okay.
Yeah.
And so the cow created, okay.
And then it found the first god, and then from there, the first god bore the second god, Bur, and then Bur married Bestla, which is she is the daughter of one of the giants, and they went on to bear Odin, Willy, and Way, which are technically what people see as the biggest, the main Asir, which are the gods, and Odin, Willy, and Way, then they kill Ymir. And from Ymir they create everything. They create the world. They create from his skull.
So what is Ymir? Sorry,
Ymir is the first giant. He was the one that the giants came from. That
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I got you. There was okay.
Yeah. And they created
so,
from.
I'm saying, but what is Ymir? Do you think Ymir being is a good or evil person? The giants are typically seen as evil. They're always typically seen as evil because when it comes to stories, like the stories of Ragnarok and stuff, they're always typically seen as destroyers. And later on, when Thor comes in, Thor is the constant fighter of giants. And Ymir, I don't know if I'd exactly say he's evil because he was just kind of there. He was there. He being that he was the first being sort of thing. It was I don't know if I'd say he's evil or not. It was just, it happened, and from his skull they created the earth, and the skin they created Midgard, or his brow they created Midgard, and then his blood is the oceans and stuff, which does make a little bit of sense when you look at Christian stories, because they have what is it? I'm trying to remember which set of stories that is, where basically the apocalypse comes around and there's then rivers ran red with blood and stuff like that. And I do believe you can find a lot of pagan religion is what Christianity spawns from, but yes,
they go on to create basically everything and spawn more and more gods. And I don't know if I fully believe in the creation story, because to me it does seem a little far-fetched. It's more of leaning on principles. I do believe in the gods, but it's more leaning on the principles and morals behind it. And but there are things in there that make sense. They kind of and kind of not, the creation of humans. People sometimes confuse the creation of humans with the creation of the first gods, because the creation of humans was actually done by I just forget who it was, but they were actually trees. They were trees on Earth that were turned into humans, and they created. It was basically actually it was kind of a couple of gods that came together and created these things, and then later on they just they breed it. It was kind of the whole. It's like the Adam and Eve story a little bit, because the first humans' name were Ask and Embla, and they were created from an ash tree and something else. I can't remember it might have just been 2 ash trees, but it's a lot of them. If you look at the stories, they're very comparable. But then things do get a little bit different because, of course, it is like I just forgot.
Yeah, polytheistic.
Polytheistic. Yeah, I always, when it comes to that, I mix up that and polygamy because that does happen a little bit in Norse mythology.
Yeah.
But it is interesting, and then you come to like the stories of like Ragnarok and stuff like that, because not everything is exactly clear. I'm currently actually taking a like class on Norse mythology, which I'm enjoying a fair amount, and the teacher very very much got it right because he said that it was like, since things are like, it's stories retold, details can get changed. So it's just like a big game of telephone.
Yeah. But I think what's really interesting about that game of telephone is I think there's something to be said about the things that continue on. You know what I mean? Because some of the stories that we're talking about are older than we even know, or older than we even can know. It's like, well, why are those the stories that stuck along? You know what I mean? You could say with just like, oh, just because they did, but that's not a very good answer. You know what I mean? That's not a very good answer. Yeah. But
I think you should talk a little bit. I've talked a good amount.
well, something I'm not really sure what those are, but I think there are parallels here. So I'm just going to kind of talk about. Well, this is an old Mesopotamian story, and there is some allusions to this story in the Bible, and a little bit actually the story of Job and some other, and the story of Genesis. But well, in the Mesopotamian creation myth, at the beginning of time, there was basically a mighty beast called Tiamat, and Tiamat is actually, well, the word Tiamat is also, you can take that word, it also means Set, which is basically, that word Set and becoming Satan in the Bible. So you just between that, basically.
Yeah.
At the beginning of time, there was a mighty creature. His name was Set, and then Set was basically cut into pieces by a god. Basically, from those pieces, the god made the world, and from those pieces, he made people and everything else. So the idea is that in the beginning of time, something like the Logos kind of confronted the unknown predator at the beginning of time, and then made the world out of it, which is, I mean, you can kind of see how that story would have traveled on throughout time just from explaining it like that. But also that basically years later, because of some things, Tiamat basically threatens to return and then engulf everything back into nothingness from which it came. And so basically the god elect one god to stand up against them, basically against Tiamat, and that god name. But basically they elect a god whose name is that he can speak magic words, and he has eyes all around his head. So he's someone that can listen incredibly well, and then also speak the truth in a way, and speak things that can change reality. So I think that's and then basically he goes, confronts Tiamat, and then there's a whole bunch of other things that kind of that we can go into, but I won't. I think kind of deviating from some of the more important points that we could talk about here. But I think there's something to be said about what's at the beginning of time. There's something like something like the natural world, the chaotic natural, like Tiamat being a predator. The fire and the ice. The ice maybe representing something like structure that doesn't change, and the fire representing like action and energy, and like those are opposites. You know what I mean? Just kind of like Tiamat and I don't remember what the god's name was. The opposites, as in like Tiamat being chaos and him being takes her pieces and makes the world out of it.
That's another interesting thing. So what we're actually talking about, they're called succession stories. They're not creation myths. Succession is basically like something was already there, and then another thing comes along and takes it takes like the power and so on and so forth. It's basically just that goes on and on and on forever. And but when it comes to things like Christianity, those are creation stories, because it's basically like out of nothing, all of a sudden God's there, and then God created everything out of nothing. Which
well, yeah, actually, it doesn't even says that in a way he was always there. Which is something I can I'll kind of get to later. But yeah, and also I do think what was interesting about as you would say, the succession story, is that you see that this repeatedly, this structure being born in nature. You know what I mean? You see the humans coming out of the trees, or you see, the a giant sweat being made into creatures.
Yeah, and that's a very, very interesting thing, because I do believe in there's definitely science. I believe in science.
Yeah.
I think.
No, by the way, I just want to get this out here.
Yeah.
Big Bang, evolution, biology. I believe in. And you could say, well, how is everything so perfect? Well, like, I believe in the multiverse too, which means whatever can happen will happen. It has happened. That's why we're here. But but go on. So I don't actually believe supernatural. In fact, I don't even understand what the term supernatural means, because if it happens in the natural world, then it's part of nature.
Yeah. That is kind of a weird word, but I notice something with a lot of creation or succession stories, like even with like Greek and Roman. Well, Greek and Roman are basically the exact same thing, but because the Romans steal everything. But it always seems to be a very much one of those things of someone steps up, someone decides, hey, I want to be powerful now, so I'm going to take and kill you and take your power and be the powerful one. And that almost makes me wonder sometimes things like, if these things are real, because I believe the gods are real, because I believe I've spoken with them and had conversations with them, and I'm not going to say I'm a prophet or anything, because I'm certainly not, but I kind of wonder at some points if it's like, are eventually humans going to do the same thing? Are they going to be like, because I mean they already seem to be doing that sort of thing just amongst ourselves, but it makes you wonder if like there are monks and stuff that are like on the search for God and stuff, and it makes you wonder if they're eventually going to be like, you know what, we found him, we want the power now we're gonna take it and find a way to kill God, and then like take over, and then eventually someday someone else is gonna want to take our power.
See, that's interesting. I think God. I'm going to talk a little bit confusing here, because you can track the death of God throughout history. I mean, you've already talked about a couple of gods that aren't around anymore. People don't talk about anymore. So, in Nietzsche, actually, one of his things was he could do that, track it. They're like, this is a regular occurrence. People learn shit, it destroys their fundamental presuppositions about what God is, and then God ends up being reborn. And we're kind of in a weird death stage right now. But, anyways, I don't think that God is... Now, God, because he keeps dying and being reborn, I'm not sure it's something that you can really kill. And let me talk about it like this. Like, for instance, in ancient Judaism, they wouldn't even say God's name aloud. His name was like YH or YWH something. Like, and they wouldn't even say it was Yahweh, but you weren't even supposed to say it aloud. The reason why you didn't say it is because the minute you spoke his words, it was the idea that you're putting God in a box. And you can't do that, because you can't describe it. And the minute you put it into a box, that's no longer what God is. And so it's more like, really, it's not something that you could find or something like that. And in those terms, I don't think it's not something literal. I think what God represents is something like it represents the structure of reality itself, and I think it represents something like the ultimate good and the ultimate evil in reality itself. But and everything in between there. You know what I mean? And the ultimate good and the ultimate evil are, because the universe is infinite in so many ways outside of our consciousness. We can't fully we can't fully understand those concepts. So really, if we want to find God after he's dead, I think we almost just have to dig deeper, and you always can dig deeper because we live in a universe where things like the infinite is possible. And I know that doesn't make sense, but it does. And I can go a little bit further about what I mean, where I think God is and things like that. Yeah.
That does match up though. The whole like speaking Yahweh's name out loud is putting him in a box, because in like Germanic paganism and like Germanic tribes and stuff, they wouldn't try and picture or envision or give like the gods any sort of image and believe that this is what they look like, because that's basically taking their power away. That's humanizing them. That's making them look like it's basically going, hey, I'm putting you into a form that is possibly killable. And that's why I believe we have other things, like when they created like the Ten Commandments. And for me, I carry around, it's called the Havamal. A Havamal is one of the poems from the Poetic Edda, and it's words from the Elder One, it's words from Odin. And it's basically, they're kind of rules, but not rules. They're basically saying these are guidelines to being a good person, but I almost feel like it's kind of the conspiracy of like the government giving us laws to not overthrow them. It's almost like the same principle saying, yeah,
I don't think so, but yeah, we'll talk about this. But yeah. But that actually kind of goes with the point you made a little bit ago. You said that essentially that in a lot of ways history is something like groups constantly like warring for power or something like that. That's like the fundamental way to look at history. And you also said that the Romans, you believed, had stolen had stolen everything, and that's why they were great the way they were. And I also hear a lot about America too, that the only reason why America is great is because they stole a bunch of shit. And I don't think stealing it the right way to look at it at all, because I don't think that's right at all necessarily. Because for one, I don't think you can steal ideas. I think you can incorporate ideas, and I think that you can bring life to ideas and date them, and I think that's a lot what the Romans were doing. You know what I mean? They were taking the old structures of old governments and things that worked and implementing them. And I think also government systems that actually do work, and group systems that can function over a long period of time are ones that where the people actually have an ethic that's above the own idea that, okay, I'm only trying to be in for myself, just trying to get whatever I can out of you out of this very moment. You know what I mean? And I think the reason why that is because, well, even if you're an evil capitalist, you realize that you don't actually have to do business with people now. You have to do business with people now, tomorrow, and the day after that, and the day after that. And if you care about your kids, you want them to be able to do business too. So you have to be playing a game that's sustainable. And games that only work for your benefit and not to the benefit of the group aren't sustainable. In like for instance, you know, in a group of chimpanzees, a guy named Franz de Waal who studied. You can look up his work; it's really interesting. The chimp, who's just a powerful tyrant, who's just, you know, a muscle bound shithead that just, you know, pushes everyone around and is leader because he's a bully. He actually doesn't lead very well. He leads a very unstable group, and the reason why is that, well, on a bad day, two monkeys that are just a little bit bigger than half his size can tear him apart. You know what I mean? And so actually, what they found is that the monkey troop, the ape troops with the most stable hierarchy are the ones where the ape that's in charge is the ape with the most friends, the one that he can help out, the one that helps everyone out. You know what I mean? And actually best for the group. And so you actually see you see evolution in biology and natural. You see natural selection selecting for something like inbuilt morality and inbuilt ethic. And I actually think the Ten Commandments actually.
You're breaking up. 1 sec. I don't know why you're breaking up. Let me get 1 second. Whoa, there you are. Go ahead and talk.
Hello.
Okay, yeah, you were breaking up. I don't know why. It just might be connection, my bad connection. But
No, you're good. You're good.
okay, go on. I basically we got to hear about we got to the Ten Commandments. You were talking about the chimpanzees and the Ten Commandments, and then you broke up.
The chimpanzees and the Ten Commandments. Okay, so basically what I was saying is you see in all sorts of animals, you see you could do the same things with all sorts of animals. But anyways, you see natural selection selecting an inbuilt morality. That morality isn't just some creation from society. It's almost that morality is actually selected for and is built into us, because it actually being moral, putting the group in front of yourself, is actually for your own benefit, for your best own benefit. And if you only want to be selfish, that actually works against you. And so that, well, nature selects for this. And like I was saying, that it's almost like there was a society group of people that were living very well. I mean, in one day, whatever, one of them woke up and was like, "Hey, guys, we're following these rules, these set of rules." And so we just wrote them down. It's like, now we have these rules. This is what we've been doing this whole time. Humans are really good at abstracting. It's now we have this. We don't have it in some sort of abstract construct. We're making it solid. We're making it real. Because humans love language too.
That brings up a good point about like teaching, because like teaching, there was a trying to remember exactly where, but it was something that like teaching or learning is something that everything is capable of. Because there was like a chimpanzee or orangutan who was in captivity because he had gotten hurt, and after watching like humans and stuff for a while, once he had gotten better, they released him out into the wild, and they later on found him near like a set of docks spearfishing. Which was some like with a spear that he had made himself, that was not something he had been taught, but it almost makes you wonder if, since we have that morality that's basically passed down, that's taught, and this like these rules of like you could just say like the rules of how to be a good person, they're rules like, or morality that's just like, do these things and you'll be a good person, and if we keep passing them down, and if we either improve or adapt them in any way, if it brings up the concept of a utopia, if that would ever be possible. It doesn't have to be in the near future, it could be in the crazy distant future, but that's a thing in at least my religion, that there is a possible utopia after Ragnarok, but it brings you the like question, if we keep teaching this to our children, and they teach it to their children, they teach it to their children, if they'll eventually do something that can manage to banish like all the evil in the world, or will there always be something that comes up no matter what? There will always be some form of evil in the world that will keep us like not on the exact same level of morality, but just a different like adaptation. Because you do see these sorts of things in like films and stuff, where those that have like sequels and stuff to them, there's still a constant, like there's something changing in each sequel, that's like, we defeated the bad guy in this film, but now we've got a new bad guy. And is this something that's possible? I mean, it is shown already in human history that we have had these like new bad guys, or like new wars or whatever, that we're fighting against different people, and but it still makes you wonder if that's even possible, because we are teaching these things and people are learning and becoming better people. Like if you notice that we've like slowly, like we abolished segregation and like slavery and things like that, if we'll just keep learning from that and either abolishing or getting rid of these like evils in the world at the same time that we're fighting a war and getting rid of the bad people, like whatever, win a war, but we're back home doing something that's like trying to fight racism or anything like that, if that's even possible, that like that thought of a utopia.
Well, that's a bunch of really interesting stuff. So yeah, I have to look up that story of the monkey or the ape.
Yeah.
That sounds very interesting. But anyways, so I guess it would have to depend on what your definition of utopia is, because I don't think that if your definition of utopia is something, like mental, you know what I mean, like the Buddha, you know what I mean, he made it to say like nirvana, and he left because he's basically his idea was that the you can't stay in nirvana unless everyone else is. You know what I mean? And I think that's actually true.
Yeah.
In a way, in a sense, because part of you still knows that there's still suffering, and even though that Buddha was able to transcend his suffering, that he had to head back because it would be enough until everyone else is at that point. And I think there's some truthism there, but in I think that in a way, suffering is actually built into the structure of reality itself. It's built into the knowledge of our of of our mortality. Basically, I don't think that you can fix suffering by political means. I think you have to do it by philosophical means. So as far as you mentioned earlier, like fighting the evil. I don't think that you get to I think that this is hard because you do it by fighting evil, but like fighting the evil in your heart first. And if everyone was able to do that, then we'd be able to. But I think well, what is your idea? I mean, I guess this is kind of hard to say, but what is your idea of utopia? Do you mean a world in which no one starves? Are you saying a world in which everyone is completely healthy? Because I believe that honestly, I'm not. I don't think. I'm not sure if utopia is ever possible, in a sense, because I think unless go into unless something strange with AI happens, I don't think.
I don't trust AI for there to be a utopia from AI. But
Well, it'd almost be the I think AI would be capable
yeah, possibly if we're not here.
in utopia.
Yeah.
Yeah. But honestly, I think if we created conscious, self-conscious AI that were self-aware, I'm not sure that they would be any different from humans. I
Yeah,
mean, not any mistakes, but I wouldn't see that I wouldn't think it as a bad thing that if they were to outnumber us, you know. I mean, not like in a murderous way, not like that, but I'm saying, yeah, that if they would be capable, if they can understand good and evil, well, then good is good and good is good no matter what. So, yeah.
Yeah, that brings up that. So for me, technically, what a utopia is it's nearly it's very hard to define. So, like I said, in the story of Ragnarok, after Surt is dead, after Fenris is dead, after the Midgard serpent is dead, and basically all the gods who were foretold to be wiped out when the witch told Odin the story of Ragnarok, after they're all dead, that there is the recreation, basically, it's almost like the success story after Ragnarok. It's like in comes what is known as Gimli, the land of Gimli, and it's basically after Ragnarok. Some of the gods that died will all come back, and then it's also believed that like the warriors from Valhalla that had were called upon by Odin came in and they fought the war. If they die, they'll be brought back and they'll go back to Gimli. So it's not it's a land where everything's happy. They live out the rest of their lives perfectly happy. But then there's also the question of for us there is a sort of hell, but it's not really hell. Hel is the name of one of Loki's children. It's his daughter, who she is the one who runs the underworld, and the underworld, or the land of the dead, is not just a place where bad people go. It is a place for basically everyone. If you lived a basically normal life and you didn't really do anything evil, you didn't murder or steal or do anything really bad, then you wouldn't be punished. What would happen is you just go there and you like either live out the rest of your immortal life and you're just kind of there and you're happy. There's nothing really bad happening to you. Or there was like people who were like a little bit better than them. They would go and they like it's basically everyone gets thrown on the same exact playing field except for those who are evil, who are then forced to suffer, and those who are mighty, those who were warriors fallen in combat. And I don't know if the combat has to be fully physical, but those who have earned the rights to be in Valhalla and wait to help Odin fight in Ragnarok, which is an extreme honor, basically. If you died and you went to, like, were believed to go to Valhalla, that is basically a greater honor than just dying and, like, going to the land of the underworld and just kind of living out the rest of your mortal life. Because it's the whole belief of, like, Vikings, they went in, they, like, fought a lot of fights, and they were fighting honorable fights, fighting for their, like, home, and, there was an interesting part of a poem that I read recently that it was the Germanic tribes fighting against like the Christian tribes, and normally you see in movies and things like that basically you got your like tough guys or your warriors or whoever, or depending on how bad it is, like the younger men and stuff, they all go off to battle. It's just them. But the Germanic tribes actually brought with them their women and children. They'd sit off to the side of the battle. The Christians would respect this. They like those, or even just whoever they were fighting would respect this. They would leave them alone. And because they realized if we did this, if we just went over there and slaughtered them, as of right now, that would just be morally wrong. But, the women and children went there, and the women would offer advice to the men. They would bandage them, feed them, whatever. And they would basically cheer from the sidelines and do things that were like reminding them that, hey, if you lose, there's the strong possibility that you will lose us to some sort of either capture, or they'll take us and they'll either try and convert us or they'll just kill us. And so there was a very even level of, like, respect for everyone.
That's really good. No, I listening to some Dan Carlin horror history, and little plug for him. But he does talk about briefly in some of the stuff talking about War I, about how wars definitely there was some level of respect and in good play and showmanship. You know what I mean? It was almost like good sport for war back in the day, and it wasn't until like World War I that it really became like something where it was like, no, it's a full out war for the end world. Like you're fighting for for the end of the world, and there's kind of the rules went out the window. I mean, in fact, actually, at the beginning of the wars, there were actually some countries, less technically advanced ones, like Russia and things like that, were actually trying to sign treaties. Like, okay, can we agree that like none of us use machine guns and some other things? So it's like we keep this fight like fair and shit. And obviously, yeah, they were with that. They're like, no, if we're gonna do this, we're just gonna fucking do this. Let's. And then
it's the American way.
Yeah, and then a bunch of people just end up getting fucking steamrolled by monstrous machines made to kill, and so they realize like, oh, we're too powerful to go to war anymore.
I'm trying to remember.
War like the way it was.
Yeah, so. we will never have anything such as like trench warfare or anything like that anymore, because of course, we're way too powerful to do those things, because we have like the nuclear arsenal and stuff. And there will be politicians who is like almost. Well, I mean, we do have like no first strike things in place where it won't be people's instant reaction to like slam their hand on the like launch the nukes button that'll like send the world into freaking chaos. But
we've been close.
I don't remember if it was World War I. I'm pretty sure though that it was World War I. That at one point it was I think Christmas Day. It was
Yeah,
Christmas. It was
It was
Christmas Day, and both sides, they just kind of, they didn't surrender, but they just kind of like put the war on pause.
Yeah.
They put the war on pause and like went over and shared gifts with each other and like ate and drank, and then after like a little while, they were told, go back to killing each other.
Yeah,
Which is a scary thought, because
yeah.
the minute you're like playing catch with some other like person from a different nationality, and the next minute you're like being yelled at him to shoot at him and like try and kill this dude that you just made friends with.
Yeah. No, the story, learning about that stuff, it'll really give you some perspective of like how fucking terrible things can get. You know what I mean? And it's learning about it gives you goosebumps.
Yeah.
But yeah, I want to talk. Excuse me. I feel like I want to talk a little bit about what kind of my beliefs are on religion, because I feel like if I don't kind of get this base structure right, a lot of the other points that I'll make won't really make sense. And maybe they don't really make that much sense.
Yeah, and you have referenced several different religions and stuff, so it does basically go, where is John? Where are we placing him at?
No, but so basically I was an atheist or nihilist or whatever, and then I realized it makes sense. And the reason why is because like this. Well, I realized that life does have meaning. And the reason why you could say that is like, okay, say you're sitting there and you have a pain in your stomach. What does that pain in your stomach mean? It means you're hungry. And that's a meaning. And so like, well, there's a meaning right there. And you could say, well, John, that doesn't mean that life has some sort of ultimate meaning. And it's like, okay, back it up. I just said life is not meaningless. That's a meaning. There's a meaning in life. A meaning. Okay, but I'll go to the other claims later. Now, I think like I said earlier, the objective world and reality are actually two separate things. And what I mean by that is like you don't see the world like some sort of objective scientist. You know what I mean? If your brother walks in the room, you don't see him as a compilation of atoms like moving towards you that are saying things and like that. And actually, if you try and do that, because I've done this before, it actually gets very terrifying, weird, and depressing. If you start seeing the family
that's where things like anxiety and stuff come in.
As inanimate objects. So, and it's funny, if you try and perceive the world as neutral, if you try and perceive the world as neutral like that, it's not actually neutral. It induces anxiety, it makes you feel weird and depressed and strange. So we're not rational by any means. I see every day people, from my friends that are like, oh, life is meaningless, there's no point. And it's like, okay, definitely you feel suffering. What the fuck is that then? You know what I mean? You get up in the morning and do shit. If you think life is meaningless, you believe that, then you should just lay there like this all day. You know what I mean? Like a fucking robot. But we're not like that, because humans actually aren't rational. I mean, really, we have an inbuilt rationality that does things that helps us accomplish things that the body wants and needs and everything like that. And well, yeah, this is going in a different direction. Promise it ties together at some point. But anyways, and actually we don't actually live in, and that's because we actually don't live in the objective world at all. You know what I mean? We actually see things in a narrative sense. You know what I mean? Carl Jung, philosopher, he basically believed that like there were always constantly in a dream in a way. You know what I mean? In like a narrative dream and like a story.
Yeah.
And that when you're awake, it's almost like your sense of shit you're seeing, wants and needs are shaping and giving structure to that dream. But you're always seeing things in narrative sense. You don't actually live in the objective world. Once again, proof of that. Okay, and then also I think that you could say that, well, what I was saying earlier, the term objective reality doesn't make sense. Well, think about it this way. Do objects really exist without reality? And you could say, well, sure they do. Okay, well, imagine that there's a chair sitting across the room. Okay, imagine you're not viewing it in reality. Is it a chair? No, it's not a chair, because a chair is something you sit in. Is it wood? No, a wood is a tree. Like, is it even there? Well, things only seem to be there when you're looking at things from reality. And reality is actually in people's heads. You know what I mean? And so I think that the time and reality and objects and all of that are linked and are actually part of we'll just say human theology, to make kind of grasp. But anyway, so now that I kind of separated those two things, it's like, okay, no, we actually live in a world of meaning. You know what I mean? When you see something, you don't see it as an objective object. You see it as something to do something with, as a tool, something that you can do something with, beginning and an end. Like I said, that's why I also like this. But okay, well, now that we have that, okay, and then there's kind of another part to this. Okay, shit, there's a lot of fucking parts to this. Holy shit. Okay, yeah, the video I made about this the other day was like an hour and a half of me slowly meandering and thinking. So
just recorded my 100th video earlier, and it very much went off in 90 million different directions in an hour and a half.
Oh, you understand.
Yeah.
But I'll just get to another point. But so I think. Okay, I'll have to jump around a little bit, because trying to explain God is going to take me way too long. We'll kind of get into something that I've come recently, and I think it's actually really right. So, and I think this is kind of what the biblical stories are trying to get at when they talk about the afterlife. So, when you live a good life, and you live, say, like the way that Jesus lived, and not actually saying doing the actions that Jesus did, like orienting yourself the way he did, you know what I mean, by taking on the suffering of your shoulders. Even the worst tragedies and the worst tortures can be livable and can be incredibly meaningful. And meaning is much better than just being happy. You know what I mean? You can be happy, laugh, be kind of empty, but meaning is something that's like it lasts longer than the happiness. The happiness, and I think that's what's more. And well, okay. Part of the idea of what it is to live like Jesus is being able to completely die and to be reborn. And Carl Jung, the philosopher, kind of viewed it as like this. A lot of people thought of Carl Jung as a mystic. He's not a mystic. He just talks about things that are way too complicated for almost me to understand in pretty much everything. Basically, that what he ultimately represents like this. Okay, when you're wrong about something, because you're not actually in the objective world, what it's like is that, like, what happens is that your reality itself is like shattered and then rebuilt into something else. Okay, and it's like, and then the way you change. Like, imagine if you lie all the time, and then one day you discover that lying is wrong. And of course, that's easy. You discover that lying is wrong. Well, then part of you, if you let it do this, part of you has to die. And it's like, okay, well, was that part of me that was a liar, was that me? Or the part of me that is now not a liar, is that me? And what Carl Jung believed is like, well, what you ultimately are is the thing that can go through the changes and that can let parts of yourself die and become reborn. And that's like what the ultimate essence of what a human is, kind of, or something. But I go a little bit further, but I don't see why you can't do this. Is I think that's that same thing, that thing, whatever that is the same thing that's in you, and the same thing that's in me, the same thing that's in my Dan, and the same thing that's in my roommates and everything like that. And that's actually the exact same thing, like literally, and that's actually what you are trying to identify with when you're like trying to identify with like the amazing, amazingness of humans. Get that amazing feeling of God. It's something like you're identifying with all of with in a way it's like almost all of humanity in some strange sense. I'm not explaining this very well. I'm trying to be moderately fast, but And also, what I mean by that is because I don't think you can actually. This sounds weird, vague definition of what humans. I don't think you can actually come up with a better definition of where and what you. You know what I mean? And it's like, well, some people say that there's no difference between you and your. I'm like, okay, then you have to say that if you lost all your memories tonight, that you would consider that the equivalent of you completely dying. And maybe you would, but I don't. I don't. And other people wouldn't. Your loved ones would be like, oh my gosh, he lost all of his memories. You know, that's not what you were. You were memories. Like shit, we got to get this person back to where it was or whatever. And then okay, so I honestly I don't think that you are. And then there's another idea. And also, if you are, then you're constantly changing because you're constantly being. And it's is that memory where you are yesterday? Is that you? Or is today you? And also, some could also say, well, this is kind of the definition that I was. Maybe you are your structure, specifically the way your atoms are structured and brain physiology and everything like that. That is what you are. But even that changes in your. Then you have to say, well, is the person that when I was a kid, is that person literally dead? I mean, in a way, you could say yes. But in another way, you could say yes, but also like as you change, your DNA changes and your brain changes and you have mutations. So it's like, well, are you constantly dying throughout your whole life? And honestly, I would say that. Well, no, because I think there's something constant there. Or, and the reason why I say no, I kind of come to the conclusion that like, well, you're actually really constantly dying and living every second. Like, I actually think that our brain works like a computer. Like, it works in like, we could think of it works in like frames attached with meaning, feelings, and thoughts and everything. And that what you are in this moment is just that exact moment. It actually constantly lives and dies and lives and dies and lives and dies. But that's actually because that ultimately always is changing. What you ultimately are is basically kind of the thing that says you are self-aware and that is capable of changing. Is something like that. And when you identify as you being that thing, honestly, I can't think of a better way to think of myself than essentially that. And I've kind of accepted that because I really can't think of something better. I've had a lot of conversations with people and I really want to understand it better, but I think that's ultimately what you are. And that once you accept that, you transcend your fear of death. And like it's been so strange for me because used to have a crippling fear of death like my entire, not my entire life, but since I've been aware of my own death and really really aware of what that means, I had a crippling fear of death. But since that I've accepted that, oh shit, like I've been alive since like the beginning of humanity, maybe the beginning of animals itself. Animals view reality. I have to go into that a little. But it's almost like that those are literally me. Just because I don't have those memories doesn't mean it's me. You know what I mean? Just like if I lost all my memories today, I would still be me. Or just like, honestly, I'm gonna go with something kind of slightly different, but fits into it perfectly. If someone made an exact clone of you, exactly, is that you? Is it exactly you? What's the difference between that and you? I would say nothing. It's like, okay, well, let's change one thing about it. Now is it slightly different from you? And it's like, well, I don't know. Okay, well, what if the change that they slightly made was actually to you? Is that you and now you're not you? You know what I mean? It's like, well, no, I guess they're still both me. And it's like, okay, well, how about your kids? They're 50% like your structure. Is that you? Like maybe half me. Okay, well, if you go far enough, your wife is also partly you. Is your wife also you? Well, shit. Well, then is my kid all me? Well, fuck. And you can do that in like, I know it gets very complicated, but you can literally do that. And I kind of accepted that, like, oh shit, like, what I am, just because I'm just specifically in this body. The only reason that I say that I'm in, because I am in my body, which doesn't make sense, but it actually makes really complete sense. The reason that you say you're in your body is because you're in your, and it's like, yes, and like I said, I know John Rieger is going to die. I'm not going to be on some spiritual plane after this or something like that where I'm going to be somewhere else. I think ultimately what consciousness is, self-consciousness is, well, fuck, you probably get the point.
Okay, so it's basically like the constant existence of you. You might be changing what physical vessel you're in.
Well, no, it's not even changing my physical vessel. Like, I think I just constantly am. Like, I think I'm constantly am. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think that's honestly how people have evolved to kind of view the world. And I think it's honestly a correct way to view the world, because we're actually trying to, well, in evolutionary terms or biology terms, you're trying to sustain your genes across a period of times. Because if you weren't trying to do that, you would have already died, or those genes wouldn't be around anymore. And I think the best way to do that is to view yourself in this case, all of my neighbors would be humanity, in a sense, as all actually one thing. So really, I guess, like, Neanderthal, yeah, it's really, I guess, kind of a mixture between, as you could say, the extrapolations of, like, Buddhism, Christianity, and some other things like that. But looking at it in not a way of stories, of actually looking at it like a philosophical way of, like, okay, where the fuck are you? Or what the fuck are you, and where the fuck are you? Those are questions that I try to figure out for a very long time. Those are definitions that are hard to come up with. It's very even fucking hard to come up with what the fuck consciousness is in the first place. But, like, I think it's something like what I described. You know what I mean? In the sphere yeah, but like I said, I literally think that and so if I died today, I know that you're still there. And so that's why I don't fear death.
So that kind of also brings into question things such as, like, hallelujah moments, or like callings to God, or whatever you want to call them, where there's sorts of things where people believe that they've been touched by God, and God is just, or God or gods have appeared in their life and told them, I am real. Yeah. I am the creator. Yeah. I am the one that's, like, the reason why you're here. I would say that's kind of how I am a Odinist, because I believe I've had conversations with a few of the gods, not all of them. I would say the only ones that I have really talked to are Odin and Thor, because they came to me. They didn't come to me in a physical presence. They didn't come to me and, like, in a physical human form and say, hey, I'm your god. I created you, or I created what led to you. Believe in me as an, like, all-powerful thing. I more of talked to them in it's very strange, because it's a very complex situation, as in, I know they are, like, they're more powerful than me, but they're also they're my brothers. So, or rather, something you could almost say it as, one of Odin's names is the Allfather. He's, of course, the father of all. But Odin being the Allfather, I basically take that and make it place me as, yes, I'm one of his children, but then so is Thor. Thor's my brother. And I've had a few encounters with them, but it was they weren't subtle. They were very much something that I realized, and it would be hard to be, like, explained to some other person without sounding like a nut job, or, like, trying to force my religion on them or something like that, because, like, and mind everyone listening that these are what we believe. It doesn't have to be what you believe. This is what we believe. This is our belief of, like, the construct of beliefs and religion and stuff like that, and this is what we believe to be real. And I believe that, like, Odin came to me and told me that this is who I am. I am Liam. He didn't make me, but he made what led to me, what led to my parents making me, and what led to me doing whatever I'm going to do. But I am the one that creates that path of what I'm going to do. He was basically the one that just, like, tipped over the first domino and let everything else happen. Whereas there's other people who believe things such as, like, God is controlling every single thing I do. He's the reason why I live, and I have to serve him and do every single thing he says. I more or less am here. I am making my own path, but I'm allowed to go to Thor, and I'm allowed to go to Odin and speak with them and ask them, and like ask them for their wisdom, and ask them. They being like, you see this in a lot of religion and stuff. All powerful beings or whatever don't like to give straight answers. They don't like to say, this is exactly what you need. This is this and this and this and this and this is like a list of what you need to do, or an event of what's going to happen to you. I have been given what could be said as like prophecies, or more of like, this thing is going to happen, because I've had a I've talked with, like, an example is, I've sat down, and how I've communicated to Thor is through the stars. I've sat and I've looked up at the stars, and I've read the stars, and I've spoken with Thor, because he has told me that that was him. As I have also talked to Odin through animals, through different animals that I've seen. But I sat down and I talked to him, and Thor told me that something bad was going to happen in my life. Didn't exactly say what the event was going to be. Didn't exactly say how bad. He just said something bad was going to happen. There have been a couple of bad events since that, like, speaking to him, and I can't exactly say he's wrong, can't exactly say he's right, because he didn't tell me exactly this is going to happen. He didn't say, like, on Thursday, November 5th, you're going to trip in a sewer grate. And, I mean, there was no exact specificity to it, but there was the thing of something bad is going to happen, which allowed me a little bit of the ability to, like, prepare myself for the worst, which allowed me to give myself the strength to face what's ahead of me. And but I feel this is possibly a different scenario, because I've had developing anxiety and almost over realizations, and that's a lot of things with people with anxiety, because it's not something that's, like, developed over years. It is sometimes developed over years, or most times it's developed over years, but it's more or less like it's developed, and then there's anxiety attacks, which is basically the sudden realization or over-realization of something, such as, like, I've had multiple anxiety attacks. One of them was multiple of them have been a "you're going to die" moment, and like an overbearing "you're going to die," and you almost feel like at that moment, or very soon to that moment, and could be like minutes away, that's when you're gonna die, and that's just gonna end you. So I wouldn't say I know I'm gonna die. I'm gonna die at some point. Everyone's gonna die. It doesn't mean it's gonna be. It could be now. It could be 5,000 years from now. They could develop some machine or something that would allow me to have a more extended life than the normal, like, 70 to 80 years, or whatever the average male lifespan is. I believe it's like 70 to 80 years. But there could be something that happens in between me being 20 right now and getting to, with my current medical problems and stuff, it could be like 65 or whatever. But something could happen that could, like, elongate my life, but I'm going to die either way, because there's that whole, like, a lot of people, there's people who say that, yeah, immortality would be cool, or could be cool, but there's the belief of then you're going to outlive all your friends, all your family, and you're going to have to watch them die, and then anyone you ever meet, you're going to watch die, and I do believe, yeah, that would be, like, bad. You're going to see them die. Everyone's, like I said, everyone's going to die, but I don't know if it's going to be overbearing. I mean, Like
It's
it's
a
not gonna
natural
be.
part of life. Yeah.
Yeah, everyone's gonna die. So I could watch them like I could watch my dad live up to be like 100, and I'll be like, okay, I know I'm still gonna be alive, because no matter what, I might live longer than him. I could live to be like however like 100, and I'd still have lived longer than him because he's already been alive longer than I have. But or I could just keep living, and I have known, hey, I know he lived a long and fulfilling life, and that he was happy, and I can be content and happy with the fact that he was happy.
Mm-hmm.
It's more for me. Belief is like resting within friends and family. So it's as long as they're happy and safe, they basically come before me. If and like, and a lot of people are like, no, that's really bad for you and stuff like that. But I don't care. That's what I believe. That's they need to like others have to be like happy and safe and protected, and that's kind of like that warrior's way, that these things need to happen first, even if it's a complete stranger. And like I said, with my I'm holding it here. It's this pocket have 'em all. It's just words of wisdom that basically say things like there's different things in here that are, I think they're basically good principles to live by. And like I've been in Boy Scouts, and we have like the oath and the law and these things to live by that will allow you and others to be happy at the same time. But there's also things in here that will possibly keep you alive longer, and it tells you to be cautious at the same time because something could happen. Like the first one is the first like sentence to this poem is, all doorways before going forward should be looked to, for difficult it is to know where foes may sit within a dwelling. Which to me means a couple different things. It doesn't have to be a physical person. It doesn't have to be a like here's this person, and like they could be a possible adversary. Like they could be an adversary. They could want to kill me. Um, it could be something else. It could be like I've walked through a new doorway in life. I have walked into like a next stage in my life. Like if I get a new job or something like that. It's not just like me walking into a residence, hey, there's a guy that could possibly want to kill me. So it's something that has to be looked into, and that's what a lot of things are. But for sometimes looking into something like way too much can be bad, because that can do things like trigger anxiety attacks.
Mm. Mm. Yeah. Well, that's interesting to. Well, you're definitely right about as far as, like the way we look at reality and things, like what it is when you make a mistake. Mistake is really just like um the reality that all of the infinite reality that you're putting off because you thought it didn't matter because you're only focusing on the things that matter. It's actually some of that poking through and being like, oh nope, you forgot to deal about that, and then it pokes through and hits you. You know what I mean? And about the whole idea about some things you should never question. Well, there's a story in I'm not sure if it's in the Old Testament. Basically, the Ark of the Covenant. What's
Yeah.
in the first Indiana Jones movie or whatever. The freaking the Ark. Basically, God has a rule that you're never supposed to like touch it, or whatever, no matter what, no matter what. Basically, so these four guys are carrying the Ark of the Covenant, those fucking sticks or whatever, and then something slips and sticks breaks or something like that. Basically, it goes to fall. It's about to fall, and one of the guys puts his hand up to try and catch it before it falls, and God strikes him dead before the second he touches it. And it's like, shit. Well, that's a little fucking harsh, God. He's fucking. Oh, he wasn't like fucking supposed to touch it, but like he had good intent. Or what do you mean? And God's like, it doesn't matter. And I think the whole idea is like some things that you don't mess with, even if you have good intentions, you're not supposed to follow. And maybe there's an argument to be made that people's own mortality is something like that. But like I said, me too. I used to have very bad anxiety about things like that. But I actually think that the acceptance in opening yourself up to that and stuff like that is actually the key to rise above it. You know what I mean? And I actually think that's actually a very central Christian idea, is to put your suffering on your shoulders. Oh, excuse me. Because really, yeah, what the always constant problem of humanity is limitation. You know what I mean? Is our anxiety about our limitation and not enough, and that, you know, a small piece, and you know what I mean, and in a fraction of the, if you're looking at a number, whatever, no matter how long you live, if you live for 1,000,000 years, that's still in a fraction of, you know, with an infinite at the bottom, it's still zero. So you could say no matter how you live or whatever, it's still zero. But that, I don't think that's actually right. For a couple of reasons.
You're breaking up. Give it a second.
Oh, you're okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I do have to leave somewhat time to go look for a place to get shoes, not a car. But anyways, so.
You're good. Go ahead. Yeah. That kind of makes me laugh, the whole story of the Ark of the Covenant, because to me, when I read into that, because the Ark of the Covenant was literally just the transport device for the tablets that the Ten Commandments were written on. And that makes you wonder, because, I mean, Moses came down from the mountain with these tablets and showed them to everyone. And then they get put in the Ark of the Covenant, and now all of a sudden, if you touch it or you open it, you're gonna die.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes me wonder, because of course they were like, it didn't kill Moses because he was a prophet, he's a messenger from God. He was meant to be able to handle like the word of God. But first thing he does is he brings them down like these stone tablets and goes, "Hey, don't do these things, or God, like, or you'll die, or you end up in hell." And he showed these things to like them, like to the people, and they didn't instantly die, but all of a sudden putting them in this box now makes them like, if you ever touch this thing again, it's gonna blow your face off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think it's something like, well, you mess with these presuppositions at your peril. You mess with the idea that the human most divine thing at your peril. You know what I mean? And if you do that, you end up with things like the atrocities of the communist state and things like that. So I think it could be something like that. But yeah, I think that the acceptance of your suffering and your limitation is the way to transcend it in a very weird way. And it's kind of contradictory of what you might think. But like I said, like, it was actually through. I'm sorry to make you yawn.
Yeah, you are.
Actually, through, like I said, meditation and shit like that, but my own death used to terrify me too, but it was honestly through constantly thinking about it and accepting it was the way that I rose above it. And also because of the things that I was kind of talking about earlier, that I realized that, like, oh, like, that you're just as important as me, Liam. That, like, and so it's like, and that continues on forever, or at least it continues on till the end of reality, because, you know, like I said, I don't think reality exists without people.
Yeah.
And like I think everything is actually important. It's almost like either nothing is important or everything is important. And I think it's more like everything is important, because if you treat the world like nothing's important, then it just makes the world awful. It makes the world suffering, makes your reality fucking hell. And so I think that it's actually the correct way to live, in a way trying to almost like fulfill the way our redesigned, what our biology is actually kind of leading us towards. In a way. Well, let me think of it this way. I'll explain it like this. I think that animals. I think the Bible is one long story that's trying to return us to like something like the full state of meaning that animals are in. And I'll kind of explain it like this. Like, I think animals are completely embedded in everything they do is meaning. They can't, like, self-criticize or have a representation of themselves, like, abstract and things like that. They only do shit because that's what their feelings tell them in the moment. You know what I mean? And humans at one point were like this, and then we're fully embedded in meaning. And the story of Genesis actually details this out really well. But so it's like, story of Genesis, Adam and Eve are in paradise. Everything's perfect. Everything's good, and God is like, okay, yeah, everything's cool. Just don't eat that fucking apple over there. They won't eat the apple. But if you know humans, if you tell them not to do something, that's exactly what they're gonna do because we're so fucking exploratory. But basically, a snake goes up. A predator, which is also really interesting, comes up to Eve and is like, "Hey, bet you won't eat that apple over there." And that's not what he says, but basically tempts her into eating that. And when she does, the scales fall from her eyes, and she convinces Adam to eat it too. And immediately, the first thing that they realize is that they're naked and that they're vulnerable. And then they have a realization of good and evil. And then once they speak with God, God's like, "What the fuck's going on here? Why you guys fucking... God, we fucking ate the fucking thing." And God's like, "Okay, now you have to leave paradise, and you're destined to work forever." And let me kind of explain that and what I think that story means. I think it means that the concept of the predator, for one, that's what the snake represents, and us trying to fight off, the predator, and us doing that led us to the realization that, oh fuck, it's not just the fucking predator today, it's the predator fucking tomorrow, and the predator into the indefinite future. We can't just kill the snake. We have to kill the den of snakes. Like, for instance, like a fucking elk, or not elk, whatever, some what is it, antelope or whatever the fuck lives in Africa, isn't afraid of a sitting lion. If it sees a lion sitting down, it doesn't think anything of it. But if a lion stands up, then it's like, oh shit, that's a fucking lion, because it's not afraid of the lion that's sitting down. That's not what it's afraid of. It's afraid of lying standing up. That means you're fucking in trouble, because they can't abstract all. But humans, because by some very complicated means, we end up getting brains that we're able to abstract and understand shit like that we realize that, oh shit, we're constantly vulnerable. We're constantly fucking we're constantly like in this fight for our own lives, and eventually we're gonna fucking die. And so that we're fucking naked and then we're vulnerable, and like, oh shit, and we put on clothes. It's really interesting. Humans actually through all cultures wear some type of like covering, clothing, garb like that too. So it's like it's something specific to human. I think it's because we're aware that we're vulnerable and we're naked, and it's so unbearable that we're so soft and gushy that we have to put on clothes.
That's interesting fact, because we do wear things like clothing, and then like people wore armor and stuff like that, and helmets. But that's also because humans have, like, unless you're like a freaking like jellyfish or something, everything has like tougher skin than us, or it has like scales or something like that to protect themselves.
Humans walk upright, like our guts all exposed. You know what I mean?
He's slapping his stomach. You can't see it, but he slapped his stomach.
But anyway, I think with that, the reason why then we had the realization of good and evil is because once you realize that you're fucking vulnerable, then you realize that everyone else is vulnerable and capable of feeling pain too. You don't think of a killer whale or like a fucking a lion being cruel. It's like, no, it's just trying to survive. Whatever, it can't sympathize. But humans, on the other hand, we can. We understand that fucking that. Oh shit! If I want to hurt you, all I have to do is do something that I don't want to have happen to me. And then also, what goes along with that is once you realize that you're vulnerable, then you're constantly working to fight that off. And that's why God said, like, now that you fucking know the shit, you got to work your whole. Fuck you guys. So yeah, and I think that's what that story means. And then really, what the Bible is like a constant attempt to kind of return humans into that paradise. And it's like trying to like I think it's something like, I think what it ultimately is kind of like what I said, is once you have to identify as yourself, not as just this body, but as the thing that is capable of constantly changing, the thing that can die and be, and that thing is the same in all of us and everyone. So everyone else is you, and so you should be working in a way that is constantly serving. And when you do that, you're almost fulfilling all those elements of meaning that your brain craves, and that you actually feel fucking amazing. And so that's what I think, and that's I think what nerd is in a way. But
that kind of brings that whole so you're saying, but we're kind of like we're all like everything's connected, and that brings the thought of that Adam and Eve were, I mean, they were, the Christians and stuff believe basically that they're all God's children, But at that time, before the snake tempted them to eat the forbidden fruit, that's when they were the closest to God. They were still more or less a part of God, and but they did this thing that was bad because technically in religion, God hasn't done anything bad. God has done absolutely nothing wrong.
Yeah,
it's always been created by, like, if he created something, that thing has then created the wrong. But then that also brings back the thought of, if that thing is connected to God, has God then done that wrong?
No, well, see, here's the thing, and see, this is honestly why I used to hate the story of Job. I used to, because in the story of Job, basically, Job is this great fella. He's a great guy, really devout Christian, incredibly devout. And then basically the devil goes up to God one day and he's like, the reason why that Job guy fucking believes in you is because his fucking life is real. I bet you if me had a hand at him, like, he would fucking, like, denounce you in a fucking second. And God bit. And then God, like, sends a fucking plague across Job's family and lets a bunch of fucking, like, grasshoppers fucking eat all of his fucking land. Then it kills Job's family, and then Job have a bunch of boils on his skin that constantly hurt. And I was like, Jesus, God's a fucking asshole. But then what Job does is at one point he's crying out to God, like, why? Why the fuck is this happening to me? Why the fuck am I so fucking mad? And then God basically says to him, like, you want to question me? And this is kind of connects to the story, the Mesopotamian myth, where God basically says, like, you, like, question me, the person who, like, slayed, like, a beast at the beginning of a time and made the world out of. And then he goes on for, like, fucking, like, 8 paragraphs worth of, like, words just describing how awful this beast at the beginning of time that he slayed was. It has fucking eyes that would sear your fucking that would, like, fucking explode your fucking head if you even dare spoke its word. The fucking arrows that with freaking, if you even shot an arrow at it, it'd be nothing but a fucking blade of grass to its armor. It's like, geez, okay, we get it. Cool, God, we can't kill that fucking monster though. But but anyway, but really the story is, it's like, if you get angry at the structure of reality, you can't change the structure of reality, and it only makes it worse.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that also goes to the story of Cain and Abel. Cain basically had the same problem. He's like, dude, I'm doing everything right, God. Why am I getting fucked? And fucking Abel's over there doing the same shit, and everything's working out for him. What the fuck's going on? And God's like, dude, nigga, you don't know who I am. And then, like, basically says that, like, no, the thing that's happened in your life, it's your fault. It's just your fault for not being big enough to be able to take it on, essentially. And that just makes fucking Cain angry. And it makes him angry. He gets angry at the structure of reality itself. What he does is he fucking wants to get back at the structure of reality, and he fucking murders Abel. And when he does that, he destroys the thing that he values the most, in a way, because Abel represents everything that Cain could be. And so he destroys his values, and one of the things that he says is that God basically punishes him. It's like, says, like, now you have to leave, whatever, and no one can and then he also says no one can fucking get revenge on Cain, probably because he wants Cain to suffer, because one of the things that Cain says, that, like,
well, yeah, because
that basically that there's no punishment that would be equal to the amount of pain that he feels now. Yeah, because he tried to get angry at the structure of reality and try and get back at it, but you can't fucking challenge the structure of reality, because it's reality. It can't be changed or fucked with. The only thing you can do is deal with it and take it on. And I think suffering is actually intrinsic to the nature of reality itself. The best thing you have to do is accept it, accept that it's there and that's a part of it, and fucking own that shit on your chest and just be like, okay, this is where the fuck I am, let's move forward. I think that's a lot of what the Bible is trying to get at. So, yeah.
It's also, like, it appears as a God multitasking sort of story, because he's testing Cain at the same time. He's, like, testing his faith in him, and is like, if you can sit there and you can put up with this and you can do these things, then maybe you are worthy of, like, joining me back in my kingdom, or joining me back in paradise. And that seems to be a lot of, like, the things that happen when, like, that in a lot of the stories, like, when, like, Jesus was born. So you'd probably think that Mary, if anyone, Mary and Joseph would be, like, the only two people allowed back in paradise because they bore Christ and took care of him, and then, but a lot of it's like him testing people's faith to see, hey, are you actually worthy of this thing? You're not worthy of true paradise, but you're worthy of heaven. So you're still good, but you're not like Cain, who was like, if I had just like sat there and dealt with it, I could have had I would have at least had the chance of heaven. I might not have had the chance of paradise, but I would still have the chance of heaven. But he struck down Abel, which basically caused him to become like the first demon. So, and and he was the father of murder, and was like, and like murder didn't exist until Cain created it by going, hey, if I stick this sharp thing in Abel's goopy body, I'll probably mess something up, and he'll fall over.
Yeah, it's like one of Cain's kids was the creator of the weapon. So that's interesting. But yeah, as far as that for sort of that sort of building, but shoot, I was just about to say something, but yeah, no, it's really about like the best way to move the world. You know what I mean? And honestly. Yeah, well, like I said, it's all frame of mind. It's kind of what I meant. Like I said, I don't think utopia is possible to make the world perfect, but I think that your world can be perfect with the right frame of mind.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And honestly, that's sort of something interesting, because you're saying that maybe Mary deserves to go into heaven or whatever. But I think it's interesting. I heard this once, and it's like if every person got what they deserved, the pain would be too much for them to bear, to deal with and bear. And so it's we all fall short, massively short, perfect. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that when God actually does do his final judgment or whatever in the Testament, like almost no one is good enough. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's like you guys are all assholes except for fucking Dave and my kid. So fuck you guys. Yeah. And this fucking kid, I think, is. The idea is that, well, like, the reason why Jesus was perfect is because he was actually of the structure of reality itself, so we like fit with it.
Yeah.
Perfectly. You know what I mean? So
it was basically like God sending down this is the model of thing that I want you to be. There's also the whole thing of like the commandments. If you follow these rules, you'll become like the thing I want you to be. But then there was also when he sent down Jesus, and I mean, the people knew, hey, we can't do these things. We can't exactly like turn water into wine or manage to feed a whole bunch of people with
one fish.
Yeah, 1 fish and 2 loaves of bread. But Jesus
I know how fucking communist.
Jesus here has been
it's one crumb each of you.
He's been a pretty good guy, and he's done these things, and he's shown us like generosity, and he's shown us these things, and he even was like honorable enough to like go and die for us so that we didn't have to die. But like it makes you wonder also things like I don't remember if this was a part of the Bible or not, whether or not Jesus knew he was if he was going to come back or not. Because I know there's the second coming of Christ. That's when rapture and stuff happens, but
I don't think he necessarily. I'm not even sure if that necessarily matters, honestly, if he did. But because I think, like I said, it's not about what he knew to be certain. He only knew what was right in the moment, kind of.
Yeah.
What was right is to kind of like. I mean, yeah. I can't say that he was probably happy.
And it makes you wonder if you're like how much anonymity, if that's the right word, that Jesus had. If it was like he knew that, yes, I have these multiple options to do these things. Like I have the option to not feed these people, or I have the option to feed these people, and I chose this right option. Or if it was God sitting up in like his bedroom playing like Jesus, like he was a freaking
Jesus video game.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Or if it was,
I see. Actually, I don't think good exists unless you have a choice for. You know what I mean? So I think actually it was.
that makes sense. There is no good unless there is a choice for there to be good.
Mm-hmm. Kind of. Yeah. Exactly. Same thing where it's like animals aren't capable of good and evil.
Yeah, that's just their nature.
They don't have a choice. They don't have a choice. You know what I mean? And it's like something like, well, is it better or worse that now we're good because now we're aware of suffering and all that shit? And I would say that, well, that's part of what I was saying earlier. Good is something that's self-evident. What I mean by that is, well, why is good good? Because good is good. Is good worth doing, like having evil? Well, yeah, because good's good. But why is good good? Because it's good. Like, you can just do that forever. You know what I mean? And so it's like, is good better than no good at all?
That does bring up the question.
Good is bad.
It brings up another question. I think of questions like constantly every single day, but it brings up the question of, like, we say that animals are not capable of good or evil, but you see like the different videos of like the puppy saving the kitten from like the pool, or you see like animals sharing food with unlikely counterparts. But it's like, is that really? Do they know? Do they like?
No. See, I think they're acting out of morality like humans are. It's like I said, morality is actually inbuilt in them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it's not. They're not aware of what they're doing. Like, for instance, in wolf packs, you know what I mean? What if two wolves have a dominance issue? Instead of ripping each other apart, and then the one who kills the other one, that one's okay. They don't do that, and the reason why they don't do that is because, well, if they end up doing that, the winner is likely to be killed by another wolf because he's so fucking beat up after fighting after his life that, like, well, then both the two top wolves are not dead, and loses the pack. But so what they do is they'll walk around each other, size each other up, and then they'll do that. And what happens is one will chicken out and be like, okay, nah, this isn't worth it. And it'll lay down on its back, and give up, and present its neck like, you might as well fucking kill me now. And then the other wolf, instead of fucking killing him, you know what I mean? Because it would be probably better for him if it's maybe you might say it might be better if this trouble's out of our pack. He walks up to him, and instead of knocking out his throat, just goes up to him and licks him, or they fucking continue on. You know what I mean? Because it's actually a good thing to have strong, competent wolves in your fucking tribe, to not rip out the throats of your friends. So, like I said, you actually see this more inbuilt in animal emerging. It's not some social creation by humans. It's not just like some social creation of morality that we use to justify our power use against one person.
That brings up like the concept, the social construct of like time and stuff like that. That those weren't really ideas. I mean, and things like the Christian faith, they do say things like 7 day, like the 7 days and stuff, which is a construct of time. But if there was sort of a construct of like this, like we had this set amount of time, and this was something that wasn't created by humans. Like, I mean, I think that in the Christian faith it would definitely be like, yes, God created time. But some pagan faiths and stuff believe in Father Time, which who would have been the one that created time? But technically all religions and things like that are more or less socially constructed because people believe these things happened. They could be like it if they didn't repeat these stories or something like that, then they wouldn't have happened, and people wouldn't believe in them. It wouldn't be something like if unless basically God came downstairs every day and was like, "Yep, I exist, believe in me," and then walked back upstairs and like, but no, it was more or less.
You're breaking up a little.
Am I? You're kind of breaking up too. Go ahead and speak. Speak.
Hello.
Ah, okay.
Alright, yeah, cut out there for a little.
Yeah, but yeah, this for some reason, I've noticed just on this platform that it like over time the connection dies. That it doesn't stay constant. But like that, I almost think that's like a good question to leave on, is religion fully socially constructed by humans, or I mean, that's technically what a lot of religion is the search for the possibility of a creator that was like the one that was set things in motion that we didn't do.
Mm-hmm.
Or was it something that's completely socially constructed?
Well, yeah, in my opinion, I don't think it's completely socially constructed. I think there's good proof of that, like the fact that, well, you can take like mushrooms and things like that and then have the same thing as a religious experience, or like religious, revelation and things like that. So actually, I think these are inbuilt in biological structures, but I don't think they're necessarily transcendent. I think they're actually nature.
Yeah. But that raises another question. So you say you believe it's inbuilt, but it's inbuilt into you. But as we know with things such as Darwinism and evolution, that things and traits and stuff get passed down throughout the ages, and who's to say that's like we don't, because if it can't fully be like trusted without like time travel or anything like that, because unless someone can go back and like 200,000 years ago and ask the first man, hey, what do you believe? Then we can't fully ever say if it was socially constructed. That's just things that we believe.
Yeah, well, I think our religions have become more articulated. Time has gone on, but I think we've always, at least for humans, as long as humans are around. I mean, I can't say that for fucking amoeba, things like that. But I think it's almost like, well, animals are almost like fully embedded into that.
Yeah.
In a way, and I think it's actually I think. Well, I guess maybe that is a good question to leave on.
Yeah, it's definitely something that to leave everyone to think about is whether or not all of this is all the religion is socially constructed and stuff.
But I will say this, that nature has selected for in humans, we could say, for the capacity for religious experience.
Yeah.
So that's something that I think is interesting.
Yeah.
Natural selection doesn't select things for no reason. It selects things because something better at surviving.
Yeah.
And I think there's something to say about that.
Yeah.
But anyways, because it's a good place to leave.
Yeah, this is definitely a good place to leave people wondering. I do say if you do have topics that you'd like to talk about or things like that, because John and I here can get pretty in depth about conversations, and then we'll most likely bring in friends. We'll definitely bring in different friends to like have conversations with us and stuff, because a lot of our friends do like enjoy having conversations like this with us. But if you have any like sort of topics you want us to hear us talk about, or you have any sort of ideas for a name for this podcast, because it most likely will not be the topic of religion every time, though that is something John and I do like to talk about a lot. It definitely won't be the same topic every time. But if there is things you guys want us to talk about, go ahead and let us know in the comments below. Other than that, I hope you guys enjoyed. All right, thank you.
Love you.